Hi there, this is Noah with the ERS Training Department. This is going to be a video tutorial on advanced checkout settings. Let's get started by clicking into Admin, Order Config, Order Options. And let's go ahead and open up a new tab and go to Scheduling so we can start a test order and monitor our changes as we make them. If when you clicked on the Book an Event button, it didn't give you this choice to use either the shopping cart interface or the single page checkout, but instead just took you into the classic shopping cart interface, that just means you haven't enabled single page checkout in your folder yet. Enabling ERS Pay single page checkout is super easy and fast if you have an ERS Pay account. You just want to go to Admin, Order Config, Miscellaneous Order Settings, scroll all the way down to the bottom to enable ERS Pay Quick Checkout. Make sure to click Save after you make any edits here. And for further information about ERS Pay Quick Checkout, you can consult the knowledge base with the little floating help icon right here in the Scheduling tab. Alright, let's go ahead and resume placing this order. Once again, we're going to use the single page checkout here. So if we go back into our other open browser tab in Order Options, we can see that we've got Damage Waiver and Park at the top of our list, and those order options are in the bottom and top group, respectively. And if we click back into our Quick Checkout tab, we can see where those order options live on this screen. So order options can allow us to create drop-down menus and open-ended text fields that show up during the checkout process like this. The checkboxes that show up underneath these order options are reminders, and we'll talk more about those in a little bit here. So let's click back into the back end and go ahead and create a new order option. I'm thinking let's go ahead and ask our customers while they're checking out what this event is going to be for. That's going to give me some really useful marketing data that I can use later. Now the text that goes in this description field is the customer-facing text, i.e. what the customers will see during the checkout process. Alright, I'm going to leave these options fields blank. So that's going to make this order option generate an open-ended text field that your customers can type into when they're checking out. If we want to make a drop-down menu with order options, we have to use the options fields, and we'll go through that in a little bit here. Alright, now I'm going to set this to display yes, which means that this order option will show up during the checkout process. Now if we use availability rule sets to limit the scope of this order option so that it only shows up during the checkout process under certain circumstances, for example, it only shows up when a customer has rented a certain item, in that case we would want to set this to display no, because the availability rule set will make it display during checkout when you want it to. But if you have it set to display yes here, then it will show up all the time. I'm not going to apply any availability rules. Common uses of availability rule sets with order options are to make it so that an order option only shows up if a customer rents a certain item, or items from a certain category, or if the customer rents on a certain day of the week. But there are many other ways we can use availability rule sets to make these order options only show up under certain circumstances. So if you have any drop-down menus and or open-ended text fields that you'd like to show up during checkout but not necessarily all the time, availability rules are what you would use for that. And if that's the case and you're not exactly sure how to do it, I encourage you to reach out to the tech support department. We'll be happy to help you with that. Include blank option is irrelevant in this case since this is an open-ended text field and not a drop-down menu. Again, we'll go through that in just a few moments here. Display price, again, is irrelevant in this case since this is an open-ended text field instead of a drop-down menu. Now, as far as groups go, I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the bottom group. Now that's going to determine what part of the page this order option shows up on in the checkout process, and we'll get a chance to see that in just a minute here. For scope, I'm going to go ahead and leave it under Web and Register. For inflatable intent rental companies, Web and Register is your most typically used scope. Web only, Register and Kitchen, and Special Order Form are specialty options and they're rarely used. So again, Web and Register is what you're going to want for most of your options here, and that just means that this order option will show up on your website and in your control panel during the checkout process. Now, any order option that is in the bottom or top group will also show up in the driver app, and it's going to be view only, meaning that your drivers are not going to be able to edit anything. It's just for informational purposes for them. Now, if you ever create an order option that does not go in either the bottom or the top group, you can have that show up in the driver app by using Web and Driver app, or driver app only. So again, I'm going to stick with Web and Register for this one. And taxable is irrelevant since there aren't any costs associated with this order option. So we're good to go here. I'm going to go ahead and submit. Then we can switch over into our single page checkout browser tab and refresh the page. And our new order option now shows up on the bottom underneath the damage waiver. Now I'd like for that text field to actually show up above the damage waiver question. So let's go back into the control panel and let's go down to the bottom where we find our new order option. Alright, so our new order option is at the bottom of the list here. I'd like to put it above the damage waiver order option. So I'm going to click on the little blue cross icon and drag it up into place. So then we can click back into our quick checkout tab and refresh the page. And we can see the new order there. All right, I'd like to add another drop-down menu, so let's go ahead and add a new one back in the control panel. And with this order option, I'm going to ask my customers what part of their yard they would like us to set up in. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Setup Area. Now once again, this is going to be a drop-down menu, so the options that show up in that drop-down menu need to be put up here in the Options fields. All right, now we can add a cost to any of these choices by putting a number in this field right here. So this right here is going to add $20 onto the cost of their order if they choose side yard. Now, if I wanted to add a percentage, I could just add a % symbol at the end of that. So that'll add 20% of the total cost of the order if they choose that option. But we can prevent the system from adding that additional cost for particular items or categories by putting the names of the items and or categories in here in the exclude field. So for example, if I put circus bounce house in here, that means that if they choose a circus bounce house, it's not going to add that additional 20% if they choose side yard. Now, quick note, exclude only applies to percentages. So if you just have a dollar amount in the cost field rather than a percentage, then you can't use the exclude field for that option. Level allows you to choose who sees these options. So for example, if I put an 8 in here, that means only users who are level 8 permission level or higher will see the side yard option in the drop-down menu. Your customers visiting your website are level 0. Your drivers by default are level 1, employees by default are level 4, managers by default are level 8, and administrators by default are level 10. So in this case, only managers or administrators logged into the system creating an order through the backend or control panel would actually see the side yard option. For more information about users, groups, and permission levels, please feel free to do a search for the keyword users in the knowledge base. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and delete that 8 because I do want these options to all show up on the front end. I'm going to leave display set to yes. Once again, I'm not going to use any availability rule sets in this case. And I'm going to change include blank option to no. And what that means is that the customer will not be able to leave this question blank and unanswered. They will have to choose from one of the 4 options up here in the options list. Keep in mind that means that the option that's at the top of your list here is going to be the one chosen by default. I'm going to go ahead and display the price for this. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the bottom group. So again, that's going to determine where this order option shows up during the ordering process, and we'll see that in just a few moments here. I want this order option to show up during the checkout process and in the control panel, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it set to web and register, and we'll go ahead and leave it taxable since there is a potential cost associated if they do choose the side yard option. So this is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And once again, let's click back into our Open Browser tab with the quick checkout and refresh our page. And there's our order option. As we can see, there is no blank option. All right, so this is good to go. Let's go ahead and click back into the back end. And I'm noticing in here that I've got duplicate names here. One of the cardinal rules of our system is you generally don't want to have settings or entries in any given area to have duplicate names. So I'm going to click back into this order option that we recently made and just edit this name. Now, as we discussed earlier, the checkboxes that show up underneath the order options are reminders. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at those back in the back end under Admin, Order Config, Reminders. Now, reminders are pretty self-explanatory. Let's go ahead and click here to add a new one. And I'm going to call this one Setup on Rock to remind my customers that we can't set up on rocks. We're going to go ahead and display this on checkout, and we're going to go ahead and leave it in the reminders group, which means that this will show up as a customer-facing checkbox on checkout. Using the checklist group would put this reminder as a checkbox in the order, and customer checklist would put this as a checkbox in the CRM. We'll cover checklists in a subsequent tutorial. Please feel free to do a keyword search for checklist in the knowledge base for more information about that. So again, I'm going to leave this in the reminders group. Color code is not relevant in this case. That really is intended for checklists and customer checklists, and once again, we'll cover that in our checklists tutorial video. Alright, so this is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And once again, if we go back into our browser tab where we have the single page checkout open and refresh the page, we see our new reminder in there now. And once again, if we like, we can move these around a little bit, and then go back into our other tab and refresh the page, and we will see that it moved around in here as well. Alright, so that about covers the basics of reminders. Just like with order options, we can have reminders that only show up under certain circumstances. So let's take a quick look at that back here in the back end. Let's go ahead and navigate to Admin, Products, Items. And I'm going to go ahead and click into the 22-foot water slide and scroll about halfway down to Additional Reminders. So additional reminders are just what they sound like. It's an additional reminder that will show up during the checkout process if the customer rents this item. So I'm going to go ahead and add water, which is just going to remind people that we need to have access to a faucet in order to fill up the water slide. And I'm also going to go ahead and make that be a receipt reminder. And what that means is that this particular reminder will show up on the receipt the customer receives if they rent this item. And we need to make sure to put the receipt reminders merge field into our receipt document if we want that to happen. And we'll cover that in just a minute here. All right, so this is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And then I'm going to go to Admin, Documents, General Documents, and click into the receipt document. Scroll down to the bottom, and it looks like I already have my receipt reminders merge field in here, but I'm going to go ahead and cut this and paste it here above the receipt bottom so that it's a little bit more prominent. All right, that's good to go. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Now, the most common use of the receipt reminders merge field is actually in the contract document, so let's click into that real quick here. I'm going to go ahead and add that merge field down here underneath the customer comments. Then I'm going to go ahead and submit. So I went ahead and created a new reminder that I called Mechanical Bull. Now, as we discussed earlier, I set this particular reminder to not display on checkout, because again, I don't always want it to show up on checkout, and in fact, in this case, I'm only using this particular reminder as a receipt reminder. So I want it to show up on the receipt document and the contract document if the customer rents a Mechanical Bull, but not during checkout. If I want it to show up as an additional reminder during checkout, then I would use additional reminders for that. So again, I created this reminder, and I went ahead and assigned it to the Mechanical Bull as a receipt reminder, and then I went ahead and placed a test order that had the Mechanical Bull in the order. So now we can click into the receipt for that order, and we can see that the receipt reminder is working properly in there, and if we click into the contract, we can see that the receipt reminder is in there as well. So I'm thinking let's go ahead and place a test order so we can see our edits in action, and let's go ahead and do it through the perspective of our customers through the front end. Now this folder is set up to use a time span, wherein the customer will be prompted to choose the date of their party and then a start and end time, but the ERS system supports any number of different models of rental. So for example, if you do all-day rentals and you'd like your customer just to pick a date and not bother with the start and end time of the party, we can manage that. So we'll take a quick look at how the system manages that in just a moment here. So I put the Circus Bounce House in this order so that we can test the exclude on the setup area order option. I'm going to go ahead and put in the 22-foot water slide as well so that we can test the additional reminder and the receipt reminder that we added to that item. So we can see our additional reminder is showing up. Now on this page, the customer information page, we can reorder the order options and reminders using the techniques we covered earlier in this video, but we can also edit and rearrange the other elements of this page. So for example, if you'd like to add an additional field for a mobile phone and make that field required, we can do that. If you'd like to reorder the contact field so that phone comes above email, for example, and that sort of thing, we can do that as well. So pay close attention to the way that this page is arranged. And if you're not able to reorder things using the reordering techniques for order options and reminders that we discussed earlier, make some detailed notes about how you'd like things to be different, and reach out to the tech support department and we'll help you get it squared away. And let's go ahead and go with side yard. But since we have the Circus Bounce House in this order, it should not apply that 20% upcharge. And we'll see that in just a minute here when we get to the payment screen. So once again, our additional reminder is showing up there. Whoops, forgot to choose a setup surface. Okay, so it did apply a 20% upcharge for the setup area. However, it only applied it to the 22-foot water slide, as 20% of 225 is 45. So that's working correctly. All right, we are good to go here. I'm going to go ahead and make a payment to finalize the order. Now, it's very important that we void this payment as soon as possible, since this isn't a real order and we don't want to get charged the credit card fee. So let's do that by clicking back into the control panel and going to the scheduling tab. And let's click back into the same order. And let's click on pay. And let's click here on the payment to void it. I'll make myself a little note that this is a test order. And we're good to go. And we can now see that the order total and the amount due are the same, and we no longer see a line item for the payment. So those things confirm that the void did go through. And if we click into my email inbox, we can see that I did receive my automated receipt email, and my receipt reminder is showing up in the receipt. Now, one thing to keep in mind, whenever you're making edits to your ordering process or anything else that your customers will see on the front end, it's always a good idea to view your edits on a mobile device. So in this case, what that looks like is placing an order through the front end on my phone. So we're almost ready to wrap this tutorial. Before we do, let's take a very quick look at admin, order config, miscellaneous order settings. There are a number of settings in here that affect the ordering process. We can get pretty nitty-gritty and detailed with it. For example, you can customize the text that shows up for your display-only items. So for example, if you also do high-end events like weddings and that sort of thing, and you do custom backdrops, well, obviously those can't be reserved online because you're going to have to make a custom quote for those. So you can edit the text that displays with those items right here. And by the way, throughout our system, you can use HTML commands. So for example, if you'd like to put your phone number in that display-only text and make it clickable, you can do that with an href command. So if you still have any questions about the ordering process that weren't covered by this video, there's a good chance they're in here under miscellaneous order settings, so feel free to take a look around in here. And of course, you can always click into the knowledge base up here in the help area, and you can access the knowledge base by clicking on the little floating help icon here as well. And of course, the tech support department is also always happy to help, and you can reach them at 505-435-9731, extension 102, or support@eventrentalsystems.com. So that about wraps it for this tutorial. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.